If someone out there were watching Earth right now, what would they see? An intelligent civilization or just a loud little planet with Wi-Fi wars and way too much drama? It sounds like science fiction, but the deeper scientists look into the universe, the more they keep finding clues that are hard to ignore. Oceans hidden beneath ice, strange worlds wrapped in unusual atmospheres, mysterious radio signals, and even interstellar visitors that pass through and vanished without a trace. We still do not have the final answer. But we have enough clues now that the silence of the universe is starting to sound very different. All right, let's get into it. Number 10. Enceladus, Saturn's icy little moon, may be hiding one of the biggest secrets in the entire solar system. From a distance, it does not look like much. It is small, cold, and so bright it looks like a snowball that just got back from a luxury spa. For years, scientists assumed Enceladus was just another frozen moon. Quiet, ordinary, probably not all that interesting. But then Cassini flew in closer, and suddenly that picture started to fall apart. What Cassini found near Enceladus's south pole changed everything. Massive plumes of water vapor and ice particles were blasting out through cracks in the surface. Not dust, not rock, water. That alone was enough to get astronomers paying attention. But then things got even stranger. Inside those plumes, scientists found organic molecules, the chemical building blocks associated with life. They also detected hydrogen, which on Earth is often linked to hydrothermal activity on the ocean floor. In other words, beneath that thick shell of ice, there may be a hidden ocean that is dark, warm, and rich in both energy and chemistry. That is exactly why Enceladus has become one of the most compelling clues in the search for life beyond Earth. When scientists go looking for life, they are not just waiting for aliens to step off a spaceship. They are looking for three basic ingredients: liquid water, a source of energy, and the right chemistry. Enceladus seems to have all three. That turns this tiny moon into a serious candidate. And the wildest part is that Enceladus is practically handing us samples. Those plumes are blasting material from its underground ocean straight into space, almost like the moon itself is saying, "If you want to know what I'm hiding, come take a look. We have not found life there yet. Not yet. But if the universe is keeping secrets, Enceladus may be one of the first places where the ice finally starts to crack." Number 9. Europa. If there is one place in the solar system that could make scientists stare at a giant ball of ice for years and still feel excited about it, it is Europa. This moon of Jupiter is not flashy. It hangs quietly in the darkness, its pale, cracked surface looking like someone dragged their fingernails across a frozen world and walked away. But sometimes the quietest things are the ones that make people the most suspicious. Europa is fascinating for one huge reason. Beneath that thick shell of ice, scientists believe there is a global saltwater ocean. Not a few pockets of water here and there, but an entire ocean world sealed beneath a frozen crust. That alone is enough to turn Europa from just another moon into one of the most interesting places to search for life. Because wherever there is liquid water, things get more interesting. And if that place also has energy and the right chemistry, the question stops being what is down there and starts becoming, is something down there alive? What makes Europa even more compelling is the possibility that this hidden ocean may interact with the rocky seafloor below, creating conditions similar to hydrothermal vents on Earth's ocean floor. That kind of environment is exactly where microbial life could take hold and thrive. There are even hints that Europa may shoot plumes of water into space, almost like a secret world accidentally dropping little notes into the hallway of the cosmos. No one can say for sure that something is swimming around beneath that ice. But if Europa really has water, energy, and time, then it is no longer just a moon. It is a cold but powerful reminder that life may be waiting in places we once assumed were completely dead. Number 8. K2-18b is not the kind of world that makes people gasp the second it shows up. It does not fire giant plumes of water into space, and it does not have a cracked icy surface that looks like it is hiding a secret. Cinematically speaking, K2-18b is pretty quiet, but sometimes the quiet worlds are the ones that keep astronomers awake the longest, because what makes this planet stand out is not how it looks, it is what is happening in the layer of gas wrapped around it. Every time K218b passes in front of its star, some of that starlight filters through the planet's atmosphere before reaching the James Webb Space Telescope. That light is a little like a crumpled receipt. If you read it carefully enough, it tells you what is inside. And what showed up was not trivial. Scientists detected methane and carbon dioxide in the planet's atmosphere, along with signs consistent with the possibility that beneath that hydrogen-rich layer there could be an ocean. Put simply, this is no longer just some anonymous dot floating out in space. It is starting to look like a real world with weather chemistry and structure, and the more scientists looked, the more it felt like this story was not finished. Researchers later reported signals linked to DMS and DMDS2 molecules that on Earth are often associated with biological activity. No one rushed out to declare that we had just heard life knocking from another world, but it was enough to make the scientific community lean forward. Because if a planet more than 100 light-years away can leave traces like that in its atmosphere, then this search is no longer just an exercise in imagination. It starts to feel stranger than that, almost like somewhere out there a distant world may actually be breathing, and for the first time we may have caught the faintest hint of that breath from across the dark. Number 7. TRAPPIST-1 does not sound like the name of a star system that could make humanity feel a little less confident about its place in the universe. It sounds more like an indie band dropping an album at midnight. But behind that slightly weird name is a discovery that got astronomers genuinely excited. Scientists found a system with 7 rocky Earth-sized planets orbiting a faint red dwarf star. What grabbed everyone's attention most was that some of those planets sit in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist. That is not proof of life, but it is no longer just some anonymous rock drifting through space either. TRAPPIST-1 feels a little like an apartment building with a few windows that might have the lights on. And once that image gets into your head, the next question shows up almost on its own. If there is water, the right chemistry, and enough time, could something there have already begun? What makes the system even more interesting is that it gives scientists a better chance to study it than many others. The planets orbit close to their star. Their years are short, and their gravitational interactions are strong enough to help researchers estimate their sizes, masses, and densities more accurately. That turns TRAPPIST-1 into a perfect target for telescopes hunting for atmospheres and signs of water. Instead of one lonely clue, this system feels like the universe slid an entire case file across the table. That is why TRAPPIST-1 keeps showing up in conversations about life beyond Earth. One Earth-like planet is enough to keep people up at night. 7 rocky planets in one system feels almost like the universe gently reminding us that we may not be as special as we like to think. And somewhere around that dim little star, there may already be someone looking out into the dark, wondering if anyone out there is looking back. Number 6. Kepler 452b was not the kind of discovery that made the whole world lose its mind over dramatic images or mysterious signals. It does not blast water into space. It does not flash in the darkness, and it does not drift through our solar system looking suspicious. What makes Kepler 452b so hard to forget comes down to one very simple question, and one that is not exactly flattering to the human ego. If there is another version of Earth out there, only older and with a lot more time to evolve, then what might have happened on it by now? Kepler 452b stood out because it was found orbiting a star that is fairly similar to our Sun and sitting in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist. That alone was enough to make it stand out among the thousands of exoplanets we have already found. It is about 60% larger than Earth, which means it could be a super-Earth with stronger gravity and a thicker atmosphere. A year on Kepler 452b is also pretty close to one of ours, which makes the planet feel less like a completely alien world and more like some distant cosmic cousin. But the detail that really locked Kepler 452b into the human imagination is the age of its star. That system is about 1.5 billion years older than our solar system. On Earth, that is enough time for life to go from microbes to humans, and from humans to social media and arguments that apparently refuse to go extinct. If Kepler 452b really has the right conditions for life, then it may have had a very long head start on us. Maybe there is nothing there at all. Maybe it is just rock and wind. But it is also possible that while humanity is still down here wondering whether we are alone somewhere on that world, that question was answered a very long time ago. Number 5. Mars has a pretty irritating habit when it comes to science. Every time people are ready to file it away as a dry, dead planet with nothing new to say, it throws out another clue strange enough to pull everyone back in. One of the most shocking clues came from a small rock found in Antarctica in 1984. Its name was ALH84001, which sounds less like something that could shake up the question of whether we are alone in the universe and more like the password to a very serious safe. But when scientists looked closer, they realized it was a meteorite from Mars 1 that had landed on Earth like a lost package from a neighbor we have never actually met. Everything blew up in 1996 when NASA announced that inside this meteorite were tiny structures that looked a lot like fossilized bacteria, along with carbon compounds associated with life. For a moment, one rock from Mars became the center of the world. Because if what was inside it really carried biological traces, then this may have been the first time humanity had ever held something in its hands that hinted life once existed beyond Earth. Of course, science does not fall in love that easily. The more excited people got, the more research teams rushed in to check the claim. And then the debate started. Some scientists argued that those structures could simply be the natural result of mineral processes, while the chemical signs were not strong enough to prove life. But that unresolved tension is exactly what keeps ALH84001 stuck in the human imagination. It does not scream that Mars once had living organisms. It just cracks the door open a little enough for us to peek inside and wonder whether the red planet may once have been a living world long before it became the frozen desert we know today. Number 4. Repeating fast radio bursts do not arrive like a greeting from the universe. They hit more like a split-second knock on the door of the dark, then disappear before anyone can even ask what that was. Each burst lasts only a few milliseconds, but in that tiny blink, it can release more energy than our sun produces in days. It is the kind of phenomenon that makes astronomers excited and annoyed at the same time, because something out there is clearly doing something enormous in the most unhelpful way possible, flashing, once cutting out and leaving the rest of us to sit there and guess. Fast radio bursts were already strange enough on their own. But things got even more interesting when some of them started repeating, same region of the sky, same kind of radio explosion, over and over again, almost like someone kept hitting send just to make sure we did not miss it. And that detail changed the whole mood of the story. A lot of violent events in the universe happen once and are over. But here, whatever is creating the signal seems to still be there, still active, and sometimes repeating with enough rhythm to make people think less about chaos and more about structure. Of course, science does not leap from repeating signals to aliens as fast as social media jumps to a thumbnail. Natural explanations still lead the pack, especially magnetars, those ultramagnetic neutron stars that can unleash extreme bursts of energy. But even so, repeating FRBs have held onto a very specific kind of intrigue. They are too clean to dismiss as pure randomness and too far away for us to check up close anytime soon. So every time a new one appears, observatories turn their ears back to the dark. No one is claiming it is a hello from another civilization, but it is still hard to shake the feeling that somewhere out there something is patiently tapping its fingers on the table of the universe, and we may have only just heard the first knock. Number 3. BLC-1 from Proxima Centauri did not arrive like a greeting from the universe. It showed up in a more frustrating way, ordinary enough that nobody wanted to scream too early, but strange enough to make the entire SETI crowd sit up straight. The signal was found in data from the Breakthrough Listen project while the Parkes radio telescope, now known as Murray-Yang, was observing Proxima Centauri. BLC-1 was a narrowband signal at around 982 MHz, lasting for several hours and showing a few early traits that looked a little too much like a techno signature. It hung around long enough to make people wonder whether for once the darkness had actually blinked back. What made BLC-1 even more interesting was that it seemed to appear when the antenna was pointed toward Proxima Centauri. It also showed a frequency drift intriguing enough that researchers could not just wave it away. So instead of tossing it onto the usual pile of interference and moving on, the Breakthrough Listen team dug deeper. BLC-1 quickly became the most talked about signal the program had ever seen, and the effort to test it was so serious that it later helped shape a much stricter verification framework for signals like this. The fact that one signal could push scientists to tighten the whole playbook for hunting aliens tells you it was not just some random bit of static crashing the party. And then science did what science so often does best: it pulled everyone back from the edge of their seats. After more detailed analysis, researchers concluded that BLC-1 was most likely interference generated by human technology, not a signal coming from the Proxima Centauri system. A little deflating, sure, but the story still matters. Because for a moment, a signal from the direction of the nearest star looked enough like the thing we have been hoping to find that it made the entire community stop, check, and hold its breath. It was not a message from someone out there, but it did show us something important. When the real signal finally does appear, it will probably feel a lot like this: thrilling, unsettling, and impossible to ignore. Number 2. Oumuamua did not enter this story through a signal or a rumor. It showed up, made the shortest cameo imaginable, and vanished like the universe had just dropped off one impossible question and kept moving. In October 2017, the Pan-STARRS 1 telescope in Hawaii spotted an object cutting through the solar system on a hyperbolic path enough to confirm that it came from outside our system. It became the first confirmed interstellar object ever detected, an uninvited visitor that instantly had the entire astronomy community holding emergency meetings in their own heads. The name Oumuamua is often understood as something like messenger or scout from afar, which feels oddly appropriate for an object that appeared for 5 minutes and somehow took over the whole conversation. What made Oumuamua so fascinating was not just its interstellar passport. When astronomers looked closer, they saw that it had no bright coma or dusty tail like a normal comet. Even after passing near the sun, it was tumbling. Its brightness changed dramatically, and its path showed a slight non-gravitational acceleration. That was the moment the story shifted from, "Oh, a visitor," to "hang on, this visitor is a little weird." Some people immediately jumped to the idea of alien technology. Most scientists kept their feet on the ground and leaned toward natural explanations instead, including models where outgassing from volatile material could create a small push that would be hard for us to detect directly. And that is probably why Oumuamua has stayed lodged in the human imagination ever since. We never got a sharp image. We did not have time to send a probe after it, and it left so quickly that it gave us more questions than answers. In the end, it may turn out to be completely natural. But the fact that something from the space between the stars really did pass through here is enough on its own to make the universe feel a little less quiet than it used to. Number 1. Military UAP footage. Some mysteries in the universe are hundreds of light years away. Others show up on the screens of U.S. Navy pilots close enough to see, and still no one can say exactly what they are. That is what makes UAP footage different from the usual late-night forum stories. These cases come from military cameras, radar systems, advanced sensors, and from people trained to recognize what does and does not belong in the sky. When those videos were released, what shocked people was not just the shape of the objects, but the way they moved. Some appeared to cut against the wind like the rules of aerodynamics were just a polite suggestion. Others rotated in mid-air without visible wings, no obvious propulsion and no sound. One pilot could only blurt out the most human response possible in the face of something deeply abnormal. "What the hell is that thing?" And that was the moment the story moved beyond vague eyewitness claims. Because when the person seeing it is a military pilot, the system tracking it is military grade, and the Pentagon confirms the footage is real, it starts to feel a lot less like cheap science fiction and a lot more like an open file that nobody has been able to close. Of course, no one has proved these objects are alien craft. They could be secret technology sensor errors, visual misunderstandings, or something else humans still do not have enough data to understand. But the reason these videos stick is not because they give us answers. It is because they leave behind a feeling that is hard to shake. If the people watching the skies with some of the most advanced equipment on Earth are still willing to admit that they saw something they cannot explain, then maybe the space above our heads is a lot busier than its silence makes it seem. Even though the final answer still has not arrived, every clue like this makes one idea harder and harder to ignore. The universe is too vast, too ancient, and too full of places where life could exist for us to comfortably believe that Earth is the only world with a story to tell. Maybe out there it is nothing more than dark oceans hidden beneath ice. Maybe it is distant planets quietly breathing beneath atmospheres of their own. Or maybe somewhere in a far corner of the dark, someone has been looking back at us for a very long time. They have just been a little more polite than humans and have not knocked yet. And if these signs tell us anything, it is that this search is only just beginning. So if you are into mysteries like this, hit subscribe and stick with the channel for the next videos. Because who knows, next time we may come across one more sign that out there in the dark, we were never truly alone.